Good morning, everyone. It is Saturday, August 3rd, 9 o'clock, and this is Sharisa from Charm City Readers. Excuse me. And I'm going to get off this little thing here so you can see Kris's lovely face. Kris Faatz, like skates, is, I have to always say it to myself, Kris, because you have cats and I want to say cats.
Yes,
but always.
Understood.
So Kris Faatz is the author of 14 Stones. We have talked to her about a month ago. She's talked to a number of book clubs about her cool book that is just released, just released in June in the United States. And today, folks, we're going to have spoilers. So if you want to learn about the book and not have spoilers, there's another interview or a couple other interviews out there that you should check first. We're not going to have spoilers within the next 2 minutes, but it's gonna go quick and go fast. So if you want to not have spoilers, check out the other interviews. I think I posted it to YouTube now. And then you can also find us on Facebook at Charm City Readers, and it's probably on Kris's page.
Yes.
So feel free. Welcome, Kris.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me back.
We've been wanting to do this forever.
Yes. Yay.
I know I said last time we would have wine, but 9 o'clock in the morning and wine doesn't work. I do have my tea. My camping tea. Oh, I forgot to mention, I'm joining from Wild and Wonderful, West Virginia.
Oh, lovely.
Yep. So I am in my friend Gary's family campgrounds, his lodge, his library, and hopefully the Wi-Fi holds. But we do like to come here. So it's nice to kind of get out of Dodge, which is Baltimore. Dodge is Baltimore.
Absolutely.
Okay. So before we get into characters, because I feel like we could be there forever. You'd mentioned, so first the book, here's the lovely book. Mine has little notes and things for reference voice in case I need it, but it's a lovely cover. Was first released in New Zealand in 2022, I think.
Yes.
I did my research. And before we get into characters, I wanted to talk about, I heard you mention in passing that you made changes to the book. And I was like, well, how serious were those changes? So a couple of things, like how does a book get published in New Zealand? Like, who do you know, or who found you, or who did you submit your book to? Not for purposes for me, but just like curiosity. New Zealand. I have a friend in New Zealand. Hi, Carol. But that's interesting to me. And then I was wondering how you were like, I think I'll change it a little bit before we launch in the US. Like, was it cultural? Was it just something you wanted to fix? That kind of thing.
So it actually didn't change between the New Zealand and the US editions. What changed was after I first wrote it and had first started submitting it, and this was like 6 years ago, was when I first started the process. Between then and when my publisher in New Zealand accepted it, then I had gone back and basically overhauled it. That was during the first months of COVID, when we were all losing our minds. And it was like, yes, it was like, I need something good to do. So I'm going to go back to my book and I'm going to dig in and pretend I'm somewhere else, So that was when I didn't change anything big from the plot standpoint, but a lot of that was kind of fine tuning characters, especially our favorite character. I had gone back and said there were things that just didn't seem as clear to me on the page as they could be. So I went back and did some development there. Just some tweaking. There were some scenes that I thought were too long. There were some scenes I thought weren't long enough. So I tried to just kind of touch it up a little bit. It actually got longer between the original draft and what was published. So you're not really supposed to do that. You're supposed to make it shorter, but not me, because I like long. So we did that. But yeah, in terms of New Zealand, also, I have to apologize. My cat Fergus is here. He is my best co-editor. He helped me write down, so he was involved in all the publicity. But yes, so he's hanging out. But in terms of a publisher in New Zealand, I use a database. It's an online database called Duotrope that has basically tons and tons of markets for publication. So whether you're looking for a journal, like to print a short story, or whether you're looking for a publishing house for a novel. And so when I first was looking around for publishers, I just did a search in Duotrope for fantasy full-length novels, and 14 Stones was long enough that sort of cut down the number of people who were interested in it, because, hey, it's a big book. So there was this publishing house in New Zealand that popped up, the Patchwork Raven, and they were you know, this young indie press, and they seemed like they had a really cool vibe. And I was like, oh, sure, you know, let's just try this. And so I sent the book to them, and it was a very long back and forth, but eventually it just took them a while to get to read it, you know, because they're a very small operation. But then they got in touch with me and said, yeah, we love it, you know, so so we went ahead, and that was really cool. But that was how I found them, was this database.
So you probably didn't do book tours in New Zealand.
No. No. I know, that would be really fun.
You should go back, like 5-year anniversary.
Right, exactly.
And then I know Debbie Keevan, who's Highlander Pub Press here in Baltimore, our friend, she's in the group. You taught one of her children piano, because you're also a pianist. I did. And I mean, like, how does that come up? Like, oh, so what are your hobbies? I'm a writer. Oh, I'm a publisher. Can I read it? Like, how does that happen?
Sure. Well, you know, it's really been amazing, because when Debbie and I met, neither of us was professionally involved with writing, and especially fiction writing, at all. So I had done my degree at Peabody, I'd done my master's, and I was at that stage planning to just go into music, like that was going to be my professional life. And I started teaching her son, Cooper. And Debbie at that time, I think, was still working for BG&E. She might be watching right now, so if I have this wrong, I'm sorry. But that's what I remember.
We'll let her fix it later. It's fine.
Right. But we were both really interested in writing. And so when I started working on my first novel, Debbie and I had known each other for almost 3 years, I think, by that point. So that was when we kind of started talking about writing and getting into that. But it's been, you know, both of us have had kind of life path changes, you know, in the interim. So I got very serious about writing, and then she got into publication. And Highlander, I think, was founded in 2019. So it's still pretty young. But at the time, it was mostly a nonfiction press. And then she was just thinking about opening up to fiction. And this was last year in 2023. And I went to her and said, my book, you know, we had our first edition in New Zealand, and that was kind of all we were able to do. That was all my publisher there was able to do, was the one edition. And I was like, you know, I'd really like to see what else I could do with it. And she said, well, hey, I would really like to publish it here. And I was like, great, let's do it. So it was really cool that, you know, that I've been friends with her for 20 years. You know, this is someone I trust absolutely. Yeah. And that she brought the book into the world again, gave it a renaissance. So that has been really awesome.
A renaissance after 4 years, but yeah.
You know, I mean,
when did you finish it? So you published it in 2022, but when was it like Dunsies?
The first version of what I can call this book, because there was an earlier one back in 2015, which was really, really bad. But it was just me throwing a lot of ideas on the page, and it was mostly just terrible. And then I came back to it after my first book was published, and I spent a year kind of thinking about it. So the first real version of 14 Stones was drafted in 2018. So this has been kind of 6 years from then to this new American edition.
I have no concept if that's like a normal frame of time, like 6 years. Like is that normal?
So for first books, yeah, no. for first books, which is, this was my second, but my first one, it took 10 years from start to finish, which that's pretty normal. I think going a little shorter for the second one is pretty standard also. It was a weird time, with COVID and everything. And I think maybe I might have, things might have happened a little quicker had it not been for just all the chaos in the world. But I think 5 or 6 years is pretty typical.
Okay. I just had a little internet blip, so I don't know if y'all saw it, but if that happens again, Kris, you're just going to have to fill with charming personality stuff.
Okay.
So my mom's on here. Yeah, I know. Like, just Phil, right? Well, I guess West Virginia, not ideal. My mom said, we were going to talk about this, but are you exploring other book following some of your characters? We've talked about this.
I am. I think about a possible sequel for 14 Stones moving forward, kind of seeing what happens, after the final events of this book. So seeing what happens. And then I've also thought about a prequel, which would be, I think pretty easy to do, although I'm not sure. Like, I've done a lot of sketching. I have a lot of stuff that never made it into this book about characters' earlier lives, childhoods, and stuff. So that would be stuff I could pull together pretty readily. I would just need to make sure it had enough of a driving engine to stand as a book and not a whole bunch of scenes. So that would be the tricky part.
Yeah, I have a question about that later, especially one of these characters. Leanna wants to know, before we dive into characters, is the number 14 significant? Like, why wasn't it 18 stones?
So the wild story about that is I had not settled on a title for this book, and I was, working on it. I was in it probably halfway through or so. I didn't have a title, and this is going to sound really strange, but I was kind of like, I was taking a break from writing, and I was kind of dozing, and the name 14 Stones popped into my head. And I was like, all right, so that's it. And I'm not really sure why that just felt right, but I was like, okay, that's going to be it. And so from there, so then I was like, well, now there needs to be a reason. Like, I'm not sure what the reason is, but from there, I got into drafting the folk story that is the prologue of the book, and that kind of becomes the unifying theme. So it was just a random idea that popped into my head, and then I sort of made it work.
Love it. Love it. Leanna says a prequel would be amazing, but we all know that already. Prequel, amazing.
Okay, good to hear.
Okay. Okay, so characters. Are you seeing me okay? Because mine is going in and out, and I feel really bad about it, but you're seeing me fine?
See, sometimes you get blurry, and sometimes it freezes a little bit, but I do see you.
Oh, dang. Dang, I feel like I'm like 3 feet away from the Wi-Fi, so I really don't know what to do.
Right.
But, if we have to take a pause because it gets bad and I need to go into another room, we can do that. So you let me know, because you can see what I can't see. Mm-hmm. Okay. We're not going to start with Rebus, because we'll never leave Rebus. Right? Never. So I want to start with Berrig. Correct me?
Berrig. Mm-hmm. Good. Berrig, yes.
Because you mentioned in previous drafts he didn't exist.
Okay.
You could give us some insight into when he was added, like what his purpose is, and maybe even Tama.
Oh, okay. Berrig and Tama both. Okay. So when I initially planned out the book, I did not.
And you talk, and I'll try to fix the Wi-Fi.
Okay. I know it's getting. I love technology. It's great. So when the book. Oh, you're still here. Okay, I'll keep talking. Yeah. So I had initially. Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, keep talking. Sorry.
Okay. I had initially planned on 3 point of view characters. So it was going to be Kari, Rebus, and Valda. And I was starting that way. And then I realized that it felt strange not to have. So if we think about, Namora versus Lasar in the book's plot, or at least not even necessarily versus, but those 2 countries, being the dynamic between them being so important, I realized that it didn't make sense to not have a Laska perspective. And I thought, okay, we've got to have somebody. And I didn't really want it to be Shurik. He would have been the obvious choice, but I was like, I just, I wanted
He'd be angry the whole time.
He'd be angry, and I just don't want that energy, like I just don't really need that. So
it was enough to just sprinkle him in, right? Like,
yeah,
we don't need him to be there the whole time.
Yeah, honestly, that was plenty. But I thought using Alaska Soldier and someone who has been kind of pulled into Shurik's campaign, against the Palavaya, that was an interesting idea, and it would give us this kind of opposing viewpoint. And then with Berrig, I initially was going to have it be a young soldier, and then I thought, well, that seems kind of typical, that just seems a little bit too like what you'd expect. So I decided that to give him greater depth and to have a greater sense of stakes and conflict for him, he was going to be older, and he was going to be right up against retirement, and have it be, okay, this is the last thing he has to do before he's going to be allowed to retire and have the life that he wants to have. But he was the last character. I had already started writing when I realized I wanted to add Berrig. So he was the last POV character, and it was amazing how fast he came together, because the others I'd been thinking about, for months. And then was like, oh, I need this new one. And he just kind of popped into existence. And it was one of those, like, I need to just trust where this is going, and I need to just let it happen. And he turned out to work really well. So that was a fun discovery.
Well, and then Tama, did she immediately, am I saying Tama? Tama? Because she has two names. So that was the one that was easier to pronounce.
Yes, no, absolutely.
Spoiler, she changes her name. Okay.
She changes her name. That's right. Well, she goes back to her original name from the one that was.
Oh, right, right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So she was one that became more of a presence than I had thought, because initially she was going to appear in Beric's first chapter when we first meet him in chapter 4, and she was going to be this kind of skeptical voice, saying like contrasting with Beric, like, yes, we do what the Emperor says, and we, of course he has the message from God, all this. She was going to be the one saying, well, actually this is what he's telling us to do. But then I was thinking she would kind of fade from the story, that she didn't have this little role, but instead she hung around and she became a really dominant character. And there too, I think I might have just been wanting to experiment with strong women, and someone through the stuff that she had been through. So she surprised me also with her development.
Is she the character you're thinking about, like a pre-story?
Not necessarily. I think I'd probably stay more in Namora with those people.
No, I already know who you're talking about, because that's who I want a pre-story for, so it's fine.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. No, but because you did tease to her pre-story about her childhood and what happened in her childhood. Mm-hmm. But and it's funny, because when I was writing my notes to talk to you, I was like, she's his sidekick, and I'm like, not really. Like,
not really.
He's sort of her sidekick. I mean, he's the main point of view character, but without her, like, he may not have questioned all these things he was raised to believe. He may not have opened himself up to it, because somehow he liked her, connected to her, respected her, didn't know her, but she had this like meaningful way of speaking to him that he listened to. And could anyone else have done that? Probably not. With her too, there's this, and maybe you didn't mean it the way I'm going to say it. There was this little play on her relationship with Kari, like mothery, but then like it didn't, once you get to Rebus, the whole story is like, boom, we focus. So like, it didn't really play past the traveling, the journey, but I was wondering, like, if you had intended to, or you just wanted to just hint to it, her mothering feeling toward Kari. Like, she definitely felt connected. When Kari turned around, she was there. Like, so what was that about? And is there more to that?
Well, yes, the mothering, that sense of connection with her that way was very much intentional. And what I think I was going for was that Tama was seeing a reflection of herself in Kari. And also, Tama was robbed of everything. She was robbed of her own family, her parents. She's never had, a partner. She's never had children. So that there has been a lot. And I think a lot of that has to do with, of course, what she survived as a child does not leave her in a place where having family bonds really, like she has never been able to do that. So with Kari, there's a connection, here's this very young woman, kind of fighting for survival and kind of cast out from her homeland and, trying to figure things out. And so Thomas sees her own reflection, but I think she also feels that sense of things that she hasn't had, but that now perhaps she has a chance to have a deeper relationship with someone. So yes, that was definitely something I was hoping to suggest.
And at the end, I think she was going to go back with them, right? Like,
yes.
Because I felt like there was almost a play that she'd stay in the city, and then it was like, no, she's going to go back and live with them. Yeah.
We're
Leanna
not sure.
says, go ahead.
I was going to say, we're not totally sure what Tama's future is going to look like, but we know that she's going to stay with Kari and the tribe for at least a while, while she's kind of figuring things out. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Look, all this after story. Leanna says that Tama gives her Hermione energy, that the smart woman is making sure Harry doesn't die like an idiot.
Well said. Well said.
Because Beric, almost killed himself off.
Beric,
So like
he would have been fine just lying down in a ditch. I mean, that would have been okay. So yeah.
And had it not been for that one path dream, by the way, I think that was like my favorite path dream, the bear path dream.
Oh,
that was so cool.
That was
because I was like, what does this have to do with? Oh,
yeah.
Okay, so Kari,
yes,
again, right? Not Carrie, Kari, lamp carrier. So like, I know everybody, hopefully, who's watching has read the book, so I'm not giving anything away. But lamp carriers have these path dreams, which are sort of visions of the future. What kind of like got me thinking was like in the beginning when Vatiri,
good.
Yes, Vatiri has her dream, and then it's like so super depressing, right? Like we're gonna be destroyed.
Yes.
And then the next night or whatever, Kari has her dream. Like, what's the plan if Kari wasn't there? Like, how do these path dreams work? Like, because there's no guarantee that you're always going to have a lamp carrier coming up behind you, right? They're identified as children. They're moved into training. Like, so I think it always like worried me, and I'm a worrier by nature. So, now I'm worrying for all the characters. That if she would have had that dream and Kari had not been there, like the whole story goes away. Like what happens to the tribe? They just get wiped out because there's no second lamp carrier.
Yeah. So lamp carrier wise, there always has to be a lamp carrier. So, I didn't really get into this, but I think there has to be a sense that as the present lamp carrier, so Vatiri is getting older and probably, the mechanics of this, I don't know. So bear with me.
Good. No, I'm glad.
But I think that it kind of has to be that when a lamp carrier is reaching a certain age, that her replacement has to be coming behind her. So, you've got to there always has to be another lamp carrier being born, basically. And the tribe is able to trust that, yes, there is going to be another child who's going to demonstrate, the skills needed. But okay, so if Kari did not exist, yes, this would be a very short book. And but I mean, it's got to be
or a different book because they'd just be wiped out and we'd be depressed at the end of it.
We'd be depressed. Well, yeah. Although I mean, it does have to be said though that there are other members of the tribe. I would imagine whose own sense of survival could have brought about some kind of rebellion or like, no, we have to try to do something. I mean, you think about the twins, the two hunters, Handan and Mandani, and they're, these very forceful, or even Radovan, he's got a stake because his wife and his kids, so I think there could have been some effort to fight the destiny, even if there was not an opposing path dream. But yeah, so the story, Kari was the second main character that I figured out, and once I figured out what her place was, that gave the book its engine. So once it was like, okay, she and her tribe are in this situation, and what are they going to do? And then it was like, all right, now that is now the overarching plot line, and now I can, kind of figure out where the story wants to go. So what would have happened without her is not something I ever really so I had to have her, Yeah. But that's a great point. I do think somebody else might have taken up that responsibility, though.
So another, possible sideline story is you teased a little bit with Kari and, oh goodness, Handan.
Yes.
So worried. I should have studied better.
Fine.
But you teased because he showed some kind of lovely interest in her. He was like, yes. Yeah, no, like I have a job to do. This is not going to distract me. But again, then they get to the city and all bets are off. Nobody's focused on that anymore. So like, is that, I was almost wondering, like, was there more to the story that you like cut out or you teased to it for a future, or you were trying to give her and them maybe some character traits that we could feel and see that weren't just the storyline?
So I wanted to make Handan a little more perhaps sympathetic because he's blunt, forceful, and he and Kari, he had opposed Kari's ideas, and he'd said, we can't trust her, she's so young, what does she know, blah blah. So to have a moment where he was like, no, actually I do trust her, kind of tipping the balance and saying, no, her dreams are legitimate. And just the fact that she's young does not mean that she can't, give us valuable direction. However, the two of them are not going to be a thing. So I had also thrown out that the young, one of the smartest men in the tribe, Rahul, the other young man, he is much likelier to have a future with Kari. So I'll just leave that there. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh, I'm all about future. I'm all about future. I want to know more about future. When Leanna and I talked, she was really, I said, are there any questions you want for Kris that are like bothering you or like that just super interest you? So you may not know this other than what you and I have already talked about, a prequel and all that. But she was really intrigued by the part of the story where Kari's in the circle house and she's listening to, I believe it was Rebus reading the ancient text. And the text was in a language that was close to the native language. And it kind of like they all talked about it and they were like, oh, it's really close. It's really similar, but it's not the same. And then they moved on because they were eating. And so she was like, is this part of like the origin story, right?
Yes.
That they are the original people and everyone's so focused on their own culture and civilization and needs and wants and rules that we have neglected to say someone was here first.
Yep, exactly. That is exactly it. So the idea was that the old language, Pure Levis, that Rebus was reading is probably the closest to the Vaya language because the Vaya language was the original language, or that they have, the same roots. And so we've seen evolution away from that language. And so now modern Namoran is quite distinctly different from the Vaya language and likewise Lascaux. But yes, if they were the first people, then their culture was kind of the first culture and others kind of branched off from it.
I know you said that when you started putting this story together, it was influenced a lot by things happening in the world, including immigration, problems at the border, all of those things. I mentioned I'm currently reading James Michener's Chesapeake, which is about, have you read it?
I have it. It's one that I keep wanting to. Keep going, yes, I need to read that.
Well, it's about how many pages is this book? It's 1,000 pages long. Oh gosh, yours is 500. So
wow.
I was like, good. I must be like a good, 40% in. And it's like, no, you're not actually. But in the beginning, and this is going to mean more to people who live where we live, which is in and around Baltimore, is there's a river called the Choptank River. And in the beginning of the story, it's very much like how the white men came in and altered the lives of the Native Americans that were living there. And the Choptanks are these, it's not a spoiler, okay, because it's history. So like the Choptanks eventually disappear. They're a kind tribe. Like there are tribes all over the place that are warrior-like tribes. And so like, as I was preparing and kind of revisiting 14 Stones for our talk, I was like, Choptanks, like it's, you know what I mean? Like to me, it felt more like indigenous people-ish because it's like, the white men, we've decided we're going to do this thing and we are just going to move everybody out to the sidelines. And if they disappear, oh, well, who cares? And it felt very similar to me with that. I mean, not that immigration isn't a huge problem, but like it felt very indigenous people-like to me.
I don't actually know. And that's one thing I haven't figured out. Given that the Vaya, I do think that the Vaya were there first in both Namora and Lasar. Eventually, they do get pushed out of Namora. What I don't know is where the white people came from. So I have not figured out that part of the history because, of course, looking at the map, Namora, Lasar, and the two other little countries that's one contained, one big nation surrounded by ocean. So I'm not sure. That is part of the history that I still have to figure out. What I'd actually been thinking about with the Vaya was of the history of Romani people, as they used to be called, in Europe, and especially during the Renaissance, when it was kind of this process of being pushed from one country to another, and keep pushing them out because we don't want them here. So that was sort of what I had in my head for Kari and her people, was that kind of story. But yeah, I mean, absolutely, the application to American history is really strong as well.
Well, you said white people and I said white people first, but like, I don't actually get the feeling that they're all white. Like,
right.
I said white people, like as
yes,
sorry, other white people, as the people who tend to go in and think we know everything. That was sort of like my white people reference. And I'm sorry if I've offended anyone, my own little belief. Leanna said, it doesn't have to do with who was first, really. It's that we're all connected and that language isn't actually our first language, which Leanna's doing some deep internal work on herself, and she's 100% right? You said before, this is all about connection.
Yes, exactly.
All right, we're going to move to Valda. And this girl's a mystery to me, Kris.
Okay.
Like, you can't be anything but invested in her when you're reading the book, right? Like, she's like, I don't want to say tortured, but emotionally tortured at the beginning. She's losing someone she loves. She's thrust into this role that she never wanted, but clearly has the capability to do, right? And maybe the goddess like recognized that she really was the best choice and made everything happen. But there's not a lot of backstory on her. And like, I found myself like, I was like, oh, right, she had the, and I'm like, nope, that's another character. Like, because there was that felt a similarity a little bit with, and I don't remember her name, the one that works for Rebus. He has the two like young priests that come in, and there's the one that she's stressed and anxious.
Danya. Yes.
It felt a little like a parallel. Like I started putting her life into Valda's life. Like, but I went back and looked, and there's not like she came from a small town and her parents died when there was none of that. So I don't know why she is the way she is. And maybe you know. It just seems like a lot of her story is wrapped up in her dedication to what she's going to have to do. And then her, oh God, I don't want to use obsession because that's so negative. But her like preoccupation with her love of Rebus. Like she's in the middle, and there's this big job she has to do, and this love for, well, two men, right? Because like the Tavos. So like she loved for two men, and she's just sort of stuck in this middle place. I don't feel like I know her at all. And I want to because she's so important. So go. What else to ask? Like, tell me about her.
Yeah.
What do you know? Is she the prequel character?
So maybe we could certainly do something with her in the prequel. Yeah, she evolved quite a bit when I started. The very early sketches I did for what became 14 Stones, she was pretty different. I saw her as being fragile and rather unstable to kind of set her up, like she and Shurik both being just like, okay, we have these two leaders who are between them going to, really, really create chaos. But she stabilized in my mind. And so where I ended up with her was that she was, and you're right about the parallels with Danya. And there actually had been some little snippets of Valda's backstory that I decided didn't belong there. So I took them out, which might have been part of the issue. But yeah, she was always very ambitious, but she, like Danya, who is one of Rebus's two apprentices, Danya gets a lot of messaging when she's growing up that there are lots of things that she can't do, and that becoming a Genin is one of them. So Valda comes from a similar background, and in Valda's case, she is raised by a widowed father who is very focused on his business, like I think I decided he was he's in textiles somehow. I'd have to go back and look at some very old notes. But he's obsessed with that. He doesn't have a whole lot of patience for raising a daughter. And so there's this sense that she's just always being kind of pushed to the side, like, don't have time for you, not interested. And so she kind of and she actually grew up in Parit, which is the town that is mentioned a couple times that is where that Rebus and Mariud and Gadreen stop on the way to and from Sostavi. So that's where Valda grew up. So it's not, she grew up kind of right near the school that she ultimately goes to. So she's always kind of had these dreams for herself, but she's never had any outside, like when she gets to school, she's never had any outside affirmation or sense of, yes, this is, I believe in you, this kind of dynamic. And that is why when she becomes friends with Rebus, that's why his friendship is so huge to her, because he's the first consistent, stable, kind presence in her life, and she kind of opens up, in a way that has never been safe for her before. But of course, we know that her ambition is to go to Sestavy and join the Great House, and his is to go back home and be the Janine in this little village. So the two of them can't. There's no future, but that's why he has such an impact on her, and that's what she is dealing with, for a while, is that she's always trying to compensate for this lack of belief that she grew up with, and kind of setting her own determination against all of the stuff that she was told, or just the effect that being kind of ignored and pushed aside had on her. And then when she gets to Sestavy, she discovers that things aren't quite it's certainly not as rosy and lovely as she had hoped, but now she's there, and so she's the kind of person who is going to, she kind of feels like, well, I'm going to make this work somehow. And she ends up, I think that she would have been quite happy to stay as Tava Balsa, even working for someone like Galvo, if he had won the election. Mm-hmm. I think Tava Balsa was really sort of her ideal role, and she didn't want to be, pushed into this, like, I wasn't even elected and now here I am and I'm supposed to be doing. So that is what makes Fall to tick. I don't know if that helps at all.
No, it does. And I mean, like, why wouldn't you fall in love with someone who's the only one who's ever validated you? Like,
yeah. Mm-hmm,
I mean, exactly. Not to mention he's a really great guy. So let's move on to him.
Speaking of.
He's our favorite.
Mm-hmm. Yes, he is.
Thanks for posting that post about how much I love him.
Sure.
I'm married though, so does he.
And imaginary, like you said.
I know, right? Imaginary. I also sort of want to marry Colin Bridgerton. So
yeah.
Okay, but I love my husband. Will never watch this. You are my soulmate. Okay. Rebus. You mentioned again that Rebus looked different at the beginning than he looks now. So how, I don't want to spend too much time there because I just want to talk about Rebus, but I am curious how he changed.
So the very first drafts, I was saying the one that I wrote in 2015, I made some arbitrary choices, and one of them initially was that he was going to be kind of small, like short and, kind of slender built. And I got away from that. It was really arbitrary. I'd had a small protagonist in my first book, so I decided, well, this one I should change it up. He should be tall. So that was the first thing. And then what was funny to me was initially I had him sandy-haired, and that kind of stuck around for a while. But I decided that, blue eyes and blonde hair is just a little bit too expected. So I decided to make his hair brown. And what was very funny was that when I changed that one little thing, it sort of snapped him into focus. And there were things that I understood, or he felt like a different person because of hair color, which is bizarre, but but the one thing that was consistent was the blue eyes. That was always really clear. I was like, okay, that's but his appearance did kind of reshape by the time I sat down in 2018 to really write the book.
Okay, good to know. No, and he gets I don't know where he gets the blue eyes, but like you also mentioned a few times that Klaya also had bright blue eyes, and I'm like, so there's a parallel. Do we think Klaya had the gift?
Oh, we know she did.
Is there a tie-in with the blue eyes and the gift, or just the ethnic background?
I don't know. I think so. The implication is that Klaya is her, say, bloodline was kind of the originator of this gift. So whoever has it has to have some tie back to her. But by the time you get to when 14 Stones take place, that bloodline is that's kind of like the whole Nemoran diaspora. What I was really just looking for was a connection to make a link between her and Rebus so that it was clear what Kari's seeing in that path dream when Klaya falls from the wall into the ocean is, for her, it's also foreshadowing what's going to happen to him. So I wanted the link between the two of them to be really clear. Okay.
Because I was rereading certain parts and I was like, oh, right. Like, this is what stinks about having time between the book. Because then I was referencing it and I'm like, oh, I want to talk about that. I want to talk about that. The gift. You've often referred to both Kari's gift and Rebus's gift is magic. And I kind of tend to think of magic in modern day as like Harry Potter, like a magic wand. So it's not like when you say magic, I always like feel a little disconnected because it does feel more gifty than like it's been gifted upon you versus maybe inherited. But I know that's not clear yet. You and I have had backstory conversations. Where did the idea come from? And especially the imagery, because when you describe it, you describe ropes and lights, which of course then I can see in my head, especially in the big scene towards the end when he's changing the world, but I can see it. And so I was wondering like where that, you knew he was going to have a gift. You knew the gift would be, how's it described? It lets you reach into another person's mind and touch what you find there, which is beautiful. But like, where'd the origin of that come from? Like you knew he had to have something special, but how do you land there? Or don't you know?
That's a great question. It came from basically thinking, this is something I really wish I could do, so being myself a highly anxious person, and, certainly having had lots of experience in situations where it's like, I really want to just like, you feel that there's this sort of trap or there's an impediment of some kind, and you wish that you could just reach in and cut, and be able to redirect energy or change energy. So that's where the idea, kind of the broad idea came from. What would it be like if you could manipulate energy in that way? What would it be like if you could give relief in that way, and just give somebody that breathing space, like that. So, and I also knew about his physical condition before I knew about the gift. And it was like, okay, there's going to be something that offsets this problem that he has, this physical problem. And of course, then that had to be something he was able to do with his mind. But the net, I sort of had to play around. I mean, it took me like a year of thinking about it to play around with the rules. Like, well, how does this work? And what is it that he's actually doing? And what are the limitations? And being able to picture the nets myself and say different emotions have different colors. And then strength determines thickness, of the lines of the net. So that was a lot of just kind of like, let me try this and see if it makes sense, and then if it doesn't make sense, okay, how are we gonna fix it?
No, it's just, I mean, it's brilliant. And like, I started when I was writing Notes to God and thinking of like everyone, but not everyone, because like there's the pregnant woman he helps and she's just anxious. But then there's his brother and there's Shurik, and they have, and his dad, and they have what I'm going to call an affliction. Like, is the affliction defined? Is it just like, anger? Is it just like, is it defined? Is there like a name to it? Is there a modern name to it? Like, do you have, because clearly those characters have something in common that Rebus can or cannot help depending on, his age. But like, is it an affliction or is it just the kind of like anxiety that you're talking about?
I think that Silvus in particular, so Rebus and Gudrine's father, there is something going on there that in this society isn't understood or defined. Like they don't necessarily have a word for it, but it has to do with emotional, kind of an emotional dysfunction, that he has this extreme, and part of it is affected by circumstance and, what happened to him in Sastavi and the sense of betrayal by a friend. But that there's difficulty managing anger, and that he has these spikes of anger that to me suggest some kind of reaction to perhaps depression, like systemic depression or something like that. So there's something else. There's like a chronic condition for both him and Gudrine. Shurik comes from, he's the product of this line of, Alaska emperors, and he's got all of this entitlement and all of these ideas about, messaging from God and stuff. So I think that's more situational than anything else. But I think for both Silvus and Gudrine, there is something going on physically, mentally that kind of adds to what they're actually feeling and experiencing. It kind of raises all of that.
Amplifies it. Yeah, Leanna says it's fear. And I think we all know, we're special. We all know that like fear and anger and anxiety are very much related, right? Like when you are in a state of fear, your body does some self-protection and it turns into anger and anxiety. So, you know, I don't know exactly. Well, I mean, I guess I do. I read the book. What Sylvis is afraid of, right? And I was Gendron. Is that right?
Gendron.
Gendron. See, but thank you for correcting me. It's very important. So Gendron, like, and there are certainly things that he's afraid of. Like he comes off as a very like arrogant character, but there's a lot he's hiding, right? So the fear of the things he's hiding kind of getting out could also, you know. Okay. No, I'm talking about the wrong one. I was talking about the one who wanted to be Tava Balsa. Hold on, what's his name? He wanted Rebus to go in and remove Sylvis from his brain.
He wanted to lose his memories.
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that, you know, I'm glad we talked through that though, because I was like, as an affliction and like, you have it, and you have it, and you have it, but you clarified it's more like emotional deregulation and how they are unable to cope or deal with that emotional deregulation in their own way.
Yeah. And I think that to Rebus, certainly it's not so much that they have a problem as that they are experiencing something that gives pain and that he can change. So it's not so much like, oh, you have a sickness and I'm going to fix it. It's more like I can alleviate this experience for you, and that is something that I want to do. So just to kind of, I mean, I think in Nemorin society there isn't such a sense of necessarily mental illness. It's more like you are suffering, and let me do something that might help.
Okay, no, that's good. That's good. That's very clarifying. Real quick time check, because I think you have to work today. Am I cut off at 10 o'clock?
10-ish. I'll have to leave by 10:30. So yeah,
I might have to cut out a little bit of Watership Down. It's fine. I want to respect you. So, but I, you know, kind of last on Rebus, I feel like what he was able to do for his brother at the end was probably very healing. Like he was not able to do it for his dad, but he could come in and save his family because he's been saving his brother. He's saving his sister-in-law and his nieces and nephews. And he was kind of given permission to do that. So it's very, very healing. Okay. We are going to move into, now everyone, Kris knows this is happening, but she doesn't know what I've done. We're going to move into a quick 5 minutes. So we'll have to bust through them of something that I haven't really named. So for lack of a better name, I'm going to call it Cast My Character. And what I've done
all right.
Based on no talent. Okay. So I'm not a casting director. I'm in marketing. And I read books. And so I've never casted anyone in my life, but I have tried to cast Rebus purely on looks alone. So if you're like, this character could never do that role, I don't know. And to be fair, Kris and I were talking, and some of these people I really don't know well. Like I was like, actor, blue eyes. And I just went through people. And also I tried to pick people who could, because I don't know their acting skills, have a rugged look, right? Because I feel like Rebus has a little rugged look. He also at times looks ill. You know what I mean? He goes through things that look, and he is worn and he has weak moments, right? So like some of these guys are hunky, but I needed someone who could also look hunky and tired. So I'm a little terrified that you were going to be like, none of these actually fit what I was thinking. But I'm just going to go ahead and kick it off so that way we can look at it.
Absolutely.
The first one, drum roll, please. Bradley Cooper.
I can live with that.
Okay. Oh, you can live with it. Okay. Well, at least one is not horrible. I don't even want to know. If we're at the end and you're like, none of these work, that's fine. Because guess what? I'm not going to be your casting director. But he's fairly well known. And when I loved his eyeballs, and I loved that his skin was kind of darker, at least in this photo. And I loved that he could have a rugged look. I don't know what he looks like when he's tired. But that was one of them. Okay. So next one, let me remove Mr. Cooper. And I had to figure out a whole new set of skills for
this is impressive.
This. I know, like I was like, how do I do this? Okay. Oh, and I also want to say all these guys are in their 40s and like 51. So I know Rebus is like 30. So
he's in his 30s, but he looks older because yeah.
Because none of the young guys, they were too young. They looked too like posh and svelte. And I was like, that's not what I'm going for. Okay. So the older version of Jude Law. No? Okay. Jude Law's
I love Jude Law. He's awesome, but yeah.
But even that right side one, I was like, maybe, okay, is too
chiseled, I think. That's a little too chiseled.
Yeah, I had some people with them, and I was like, that's not right. Okay, so you're really going to hate this next one.
Okay.
And I'm going to apologize to this guy because I don't think he's thought of often as handsome.
Okay.
But I liked his gangly look. Oh, God, I hope he never watches this. But he's so talented, right? Oh, I'm not doing it based on talented, but Adrian Brody.
Yeah. The shape of the face is
wrong. It's too long.
It's too long. Yeah.
But I loved it. He looks disheveled almost all the time.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The disheveled is good. I like the disheveled, but yeah.
Well, and caveat, he has green eyes. Okay, so he's the only one that does not have blue eyes, but I thought those could pass, right? They're contacts now. Okay.
Contacts, exactly.
My mom is mentioning someone that I don't know, Zachary Quinto.
I don't know him either.
Okay. Mom, in another life, I'll look him up and I'll present it to her. Okay. All right. Slides. Okay. Who's my next guy? He's my last guy. Okay. This is Adrian Grenier, Entourage. I believe he's Hispanic, so I liked his darker skin. And he's little in this picture, but his blue eyes really popped.
Okay.
He's 48.
Okay.
He also has my birthday.
Okay.
No? Okay, but not
bad.
I mean, last one.
Not bad.
No. Okay, see, I felt like he should actually have a darker complexion because they're like outdoors people.
Right.
Farming and water and okay. And plus we know that there's a tie-in to the native people, right? So back in the day, okay. That's why I said not white. Okay, this is my last and final. And I gotta say, I don't even know this guy. Okay. So I like pulled him off the internet. Shockingly, he does mostly voice roles.
Oh,
I like his face. Okay, here we go. Josh Keaton.
That's not bad. I think him and Bradley Cooper would be the two that are closest.
This one, he looks a little like, sorry, Josh, gangly. This one, the eyes really popped. And it, like, you can't see it because I made it really small. So this is my fault, but
that's okay.
Right. So Josh Keaton and Bradley Cooper. Possibly cast in the future production of 14 Stones coming soon to Charm City readers because. Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna take these guys off. Bye, guys. I really felt strongly about Josh, man. I was like the blue eyes. We only have a couple minutes left, so I'm not going to go as much into Watership Down as I wanted, and maybe this will just be you and I over wine sometime. Because you mentioned in Annie's interview on her page, and also Tim Lewis, loved the interview, by the way, on his, about these parallels with Watership Down. And I was raised on the movie, so I only read the book as an adult.
Okay.
And I think you had a quote where, like, you either like it or you hate it, this book.
Love it or hate
it.
And
I loved it because I had the context of the movie. And then I tried to sell it to my husband and I was like, it's about rabbits, but it's not really about rabbits. And he finally listened to it. Audiobook. And he was like, it's totally about rabbits. And I'm like, yeah, but I had to sell you on it. Like, you weren't going to listen to a story that was about a bunch of rabbits. But I felt like there were lots of parallels. Like, you have folklore and then there's Alahara. I don't even know if I'm saying that right, but it is the basis of some of the decisions they make in the story. And then I felt like with Rebus, he's like some combination of like Hazel, who is the simple leader who doesn't really want to be a leader, but ends up being a leader. But also like Fiverr's skill, although Fiverr's skill is different and like a little scary. But then like Kari's kind of Fiver and Heisenflay. And then I thought Barrig is kind of bigwig. Or maybe Captain Holly. And then I couldn't find anyone for Valda.
Yes, I like that.
I was like, who's Valda? Again, like I cannot find her. I can't find Valda. I don't know if you've thought about this. I've probably thought way too much about this.
Yeah, I didn't really, because I never really saw direct parallels, but that's fine. I mean, I believe it, and honestly, between Hazel and Rebus, for sure. It was more the feel, like Richard Adams is my hero, and just the feel of the story and the community, the strength of the bonds between characters. I read Watership Down when I was 10, and I've revisited it many times in the last 35 years. Just keep coming back to it. So it was less. I love the parallel of Berrig and Captain Hawley. I think that's right on. For Valda, it's tough because Watership Down's one flaw is it doesn't have many female, strong female characters.
I was like, when I was trying to pick, I was like, it can't be the bunny from the farm. Like what her name was, I can't remember.
No.
Who was the rabbit who left to do the new Warren? At the very end, who was the leader?
Oh, Captain Campion. Actually, that's not bad. Yeah. Captain Campion. That's a possibility. Yes, he's the one that was ultimately, he was in thrall of the big bad scary leader, but then ultimately, found his own feet and went and did his own thing. So that is a definite possibility. Yes.
All right. New conversation at a later
sort of learning
date.
to be a leader. That's him.
Yeah. Didn't really want it, but could step up.
Yes.
Okay. I have a surprise for you. I have a surprise for you.
Okay.
I'm very excited about this surprise. I hope you're excited. So we know that Richard Adams is no longer with us, but his daughters are still alive. And I reached out to them via email. So it's not signed, but they wrote you a little note. And I wish I would have arranged this in a way where you had it with you. But I'm going to give it to you. And I'm going to read it to you. It's this. Okay. So I'm going to read it for everyone.
Oh, man.
Oh, you're crying. Okay.
He's my hero. You have no idea what this means. This is huge.
Because I was like, they're still alive. They're older now. They're quite a bit older. Okay. Dear Kris Faatz, it has come to our attention from the interviews you have given for your book, 14 Stones, that you have been profoundly influenced by Watership Down by Richard Adams. We are always pleased that his work is still having such a positive effect on readers, and indeed can inspire those readers to become writers. We wanted to write to you via your contact, Charisse Acosta, sorry, I'm in it, to acknowledge the love she says you have for Richard and the novel, and to wish you well in all that you write and publish. With very best wishes, Juliet and Rosamund, the daughters of Richard Adams, and Watership Down Enterprises, which is his estate. Oh. So I'm gonna give this to one person. But
thank you. Wow.
Maybe you can use that as inspiration. I'll send you the email too, because again, they didn't sign it. They're in England.
Well, of course.
Right.
Wow.
But,
that is amazing. I never would have expected any contact with his family, his estate. And I know that he wrote Watership Down for those two women. So that is astonishing.
That was the start of his whole career. Yeah.
Yes. That was it.
I can write a better story than that. Have you read his other books? Because I haven't, and I feel like I owe it to him at this point.
I've read most of them. Shardik is an amazing book. It is he, from what I understand, he actually preferred it to Watership Down. He thought it was a better book. I don't know about all that. I mean, it is really amazing. The Plague Dogs is really good. Traveler was a favorite of mine for a while. I would say that none of them are quite as amazing as Watership Down, but there. I mean, he also has a memoir called The Time Gone By, which I stumbled on by accident in a used bookstore in Kentucky, of all the random things. And that gives a lot of insight into, because it's mostly about his childhood and growing up in England in the countryside prior to World War II. So it's a very specific place and time flavor, and just his profound connection to nature as a child. It gives a lot of insight into, you know, what he brings to Watership Down. So that's a really good
Yeah,
one. If you can find it, it's a wonderful read.
Yeah, I'll reach. I'm not writing anything down here, but I'll probably reach out to you for some of those recs again, because
Sure. Yeah.
you know, he gets all the cred for Watership Down, which is so unique, right? No one's ever written anything like this ever. You know, and then he stretched his legs a little bit and wrote other things, and maybe we should do it as a book club book. I wonder who would like read it with us. Okay, we'll talk about that. Do him like the honor of a book club book for a month. All right, so I know we have to go. I wanted to share my review with everyone because you haven't even seen it. So I'm going to put it up and read it if that's okay with you. And then after this, I'll post it everywhere.
That would be
and
awesome.
You can use it how you will.
Awesome.
Review of 14 Stones. What a beautiful novel. 14 Stones is everything readers love about books. Epic adventure, a sprinkle of fantasy, and a dash of folklore blended together with strong characters who exemplify the power of human connection. The landscape, both literal and figurative, lift right off the page, and the characters stay with you long after you finish the story. For you romance readers, we have quite a few in the book, or in the club, you're not going to find anything heated here, but you may find just enough desire and longing to keep you satisfied. Kris's writing is gentle, straightforward, and descriptive in a way that wraps around you so you never want to be let go. Perfect for readers of all genres, this book is more than the gorgeous story. It's a beacon of hope, proclaiming that humanity is stronger than the differences and misconceptions used to distract us. Believe in yourself, have faith in others, even strangers. We are stronger together than we are on our own. So that's for you.
That is beautiful. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. I mean, this interview's a long time coming, which is like 3 months, but whatever.
Yes.
But we'll have many more. We'll have many more. You know, I don't know Tim. I want to thank him for him featuring you. I thought that was brilliant, and you gave so many book recommendations. And I had a note here because I want to give you just a couple of minutes here to talk about your upcoming projects and where people can find you. I literally wrote on a card, can I be an ARC reader? An ARC reader. You know, I was like, can I read your book?
Yes, please.
And then you were like, would you like to read my book? And I was like, yes, please. I would love to read your book. So for the record, I was going to ask you to read everything that you write from now on before you asked me if I would blurb you. But yeah. FYI. So do you want to just take a few minutes to talk about your projects, Line Magic, and then where people can find you?
So Line Magic is my next book, release date TBD. It is a departure from 14 Stones. It is set in Philadelphia in 1945, the tail end of World War II. And my protagonist is an artist who is, again, we have to have these gifts. In his case, I think it does qualify more as magic, where he is able to change his subjects by drawing them. So he will draw something, he will make changes in the drawing, and then the subject is changed in the same way. So it's historical fiction, it's fantasy, it is a lot of things. It was a wild and crazy experiment, but I do really love it. So I'm very excited about that. And I don't know what's next after that. I have a couple ideas and I'm hoping to do some thinking about it. And then maybe next summer dive in with project number 4. But meanwhile, my website is krisfaatz.com. I'm going to be overhauling it hopefully sooner rather than later, because right now it's a mess. But upcoming news, events, and published short stories are all going to be up there.
I said, I'm here for you for the website. I'm here for you. But
Thank
I
you.
would love to read some of these because I read when you get notes back from publishers. What was the last one with it? I read it with enthusiasm. And I'm like, those are some of the best. And declined it with firmness. Because what it means is you're connecting, right? You're connecting with the readers. So, I mean, not always the answer you want, I guess, as an author when they don't pick up your book right away, but really good feedback, Well, Kris, thank you for joining me
So I sent
today.
you a small priceless thing, and that is a preview of the next one.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I'll read it quick, and then we're just going to go to tea or something. We're going to go do drinks and chit chat. And I can give you your framed letter from the sisters.
Perfect.
So, all right. Thank you for joining me, everyone who was watching us today. Thank you. I'm not sure that this got posted to the club because I got some error and I wasn't going to deal with it now. So I'll repost it to the club if it didn't post to the club. But thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thanks, Kris, for being lovely and for sharing your characters with all of us. We're so grateful.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. I'll talk to you later, my friend.
Take care. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone.
Okay.